Hey, Diana, did you know having an uncomfortable conversation can make you money?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists, and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Mark Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
All right, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast. The podcast is about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. I'm Mark Whitehead, along here with my brilliant co-host, Diana Berry. And today, first off, Diana, happy Friday the 13th. As we sit here recording today, everybody just all of a sudden realizes it's Friday the 13th. So we're all going to watch some Jason movie tonight.
I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm not doing that.
You don't like horror films?
No, we're just going to hope this day passes by uneventfully.
All right. So anyway, let's move along. So today we're going to talk about having difficult conversations and how that can be crucial to your success as a small business owner. And specifically, we're going to go over some of the concepts in the book, Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High, which is written by Kerry Paterson and
Kerry Paterson,
and several other people. So we're just going to call it Paterson et al.
Yeah.
And I will say that this podcast will be a moment of truth and reckoning for me personally, because I truly, truly, truly suck at this.
Yeah, we're picking up on something that we discussed in an earlier podcast about how Mark Whitehead has admitted and shared his vulnerability with all of you listeners that he is not so good at
holding people accountable.
Okay, I would have said the same thing. So as long as we both agree that, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So holding people accountable. And so the book, Crucial Conversations, well, you tell us about, what do you think the book's about?
So this was a reading that we were assigned through our Atticus program years ago, but it's frequently referred back to. And in my coaching experience, I've actually recommended the book to my coaching clients. But it's about having difficult conversations and not having conversations sporadically or when you're ill-prepared to have the conversation. Basically, it's a tool for planning out these hard conversations that you need to have with people with regard to, whether it's their performance or their results or their attitude, or, there could be 100 different things that you need to have a tough conversation with somebody about. And the whole point is don't have an accidental conversation, which can go astray and can go badly. Have a planned conversation, what they refer to as a crucial conversation. And they give a methodology for actually planning to have the conversation, how to actually execute the conversation, and how to actually, I think, follow up on it in the end, of which I will say, and I will readily admit, I truly suck at. And I really have no reason to suck at it because I've read the book, I understand the concepts, but I simply lack the follow through. And just for me personally, I don't like to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's very common with a lot of people, right? Like nobody seeks out discomfort. So one of my new favorite podcasts was recommended to us by our fractional CFO, No Stupid Questions, and they talked about that recently on one of their podcasts. Regardless, so we just like comfort. With AC now, no one really feels the 110 heat in Houston in August. We feel a comfortable 72 degrees always. And so no one really likes that. There's the whole physiological response that our body has whenever we think, even like this right now, you're probably tense just even talking about it.
It is really annoying me that we're talking about this topic
you're
because I
very
feel like
annoyed.
such
I
a
can
fraud.
get this. I
was
can feel
not
that,
my idea to talk about this book.
And guys, I was really excited about this because I know how uncomfortable Mark is right now. But let's start with what the authors call a crucial conversation, right? So I think that will also give us some background. So they give 3 elements. You have a crucial conversation when the stakes are high, opinions vary, and emotions are strong. So automatically, you're not in a good place, right? When you have a crucial conversation, it's not because things are going well, you're meeting all your numbers and intakes are high and everybody's working, just seamlessly. You're having a crucial conversation because stakes are high. So no one's exactly happy. So then why should we have crucial conversations, Mark?
I think one of the fallacies that business owners, law firm owners have is if everything is going well, if the bottom line is good, then things are good, we can avoid these conversations. And it's not until things start going south, say the bottom line starts suffering, that we have these crucial conversations. And the reality is the timing of it. Really, we need to have these tough conversations even when things are going well, because we want to prevent the bad times from ever hitting. So I think that's a problem that I have had, which is I can gloss over problems. I can gloss over people's shortcomings because overall things are pretty good.
Yeah, things are going very well. You're growing very steadily. The firm's just consistently expanding. You've had a lot of tenure, so it's hard to see the turnover. You keep your good people. So why have the conversation?
Right. And, that it's the avoidance of pain. So there's this psychological, thesis out there. I can't remember what it's called, but basically people would rather avoid pain than to promote progress. Okay. That's just people's natural reaction.
Absolutely.
That's the hurdle as a business owner that we have to get over. And so we have to address these shortcomings, whether I'm just thinking through my head, what are some of these types of conversations? A high performer that has an attendance problem.
Yeah.
Great, you're a high performer and they justify their attendance because they're a high performer or their lack of attendance. But what other problems are you causing? Everybody else sees it. And if they get away with it, why can't I get away with it? And it becomes a cancer. That's a crucial conversation that needs to be had.
Other people start thinking that you're playing favorites because you let that other person get away with it. And so, they clearly are favorites.
Right. And I am notorious for this. If you're a high performer, I let people get away with murder. Yes. And I've had these looks from Diana for a long, long time.
4 years, just 4 years.
4 straight, continuous years. I've gotten these looks from her about how do you let people get away with this stuff? And I'm like, well, they're doing good. They're doing good work. I'm like, okay,
well, because I think that over the long run, you've been very clear from my day one that this is a growth-oriented organization. And so some of these things start to become deeper fissures if you don't address them. You can really gloss over things when, revenue's going but as we've talked about with growth, you find that there are the cracks in your system, whether that sucks more cash. We've talked at depth about that. But now your communication, your inability to communicate well amongst the team, those things get a lot more obvious when you're growing. And I think the authors even found that in their research that companies that did not have the ability to have crucial conversations, their productivity decreased, 20 to 80%. I mean, that's a huge range there, but it's reduced significantly because either people don't want to address the elephant in the room, or when they do have the conversation, it's a massive blow up, kind of like what you were talking about earlier. And so I think that, it's a skill we should learn, even if we don't do it at the firm right now. Fair?
I agree. And it's all about holding people accountable. And what you will notice is that your best performers want to be held accountable. They don't mind being held accountable because, quite frankly, they know they're good and, they're happy to show you and demonstrate to you that they're really good. It's the poor performers that don't want to be held accountable. They want to be able to hide behind their desk, hide behind the file cabinet, wherever, and hope nobody notices them. So, and I think that's kind of one of the mindset shifts that I personally need to make in my head is that holding people accountable, my top performers won't mind it. They shouldn't mind it.
I don't know that I agree with everything you said there. I don't think that a crucial conversation.
How could you possibly not agree with everything I just said?
I know that never happens. Ever. I think your crucial conversations, if you have a subpar performer, that's real easy conversation. Sorry, you're not meeting our numbers. Sorry, this isn't the place for us. There are really no high stake emotions there. There are no strong emotions. I think we tend to be more tentative, and we'll talk a little bit about that as part of the strategy later on. You tend to be a little bit more tentative when you have your high performers because you don't want to scare them off, and you don't want them to. You don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation.
Okay. Yes. Once again, Diana's right.
He actually never says that, guys.
I probably should have stated that more articulately, but you are right. It is frequently the high performers that need
we shy away from.
Yeah, that's the ones I shy away from, even though they may need it. And I think what I'm trying to say is I shouldn't shy away from it because, quite frankly, they're probably fine with it.
Absolutely. I do think that there is that. So in the next segment, we're going to talk about kind of the outline that the authors give us to having a crucial conversation. And we'll conclude with Marc's increased vulnerability.
Yes, a therapy session for Marc.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead & Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right, so Diana, we're going to talk a little bit about the actual structure of this difficult conversation that we're going to have, what the author calls a crucial conversation. Mm-hmm. And I will say that that's what I really like about the book is it actually gives you a handout that you can print out.
That's pretty cool.
Actually, well, you have to go to the website, blah, blah, blah. But there's a handout that you can get. And on the rare occasion that I have actually used this tool, you can actually take the handout and it will literally walk you through the process. And what you do is you fill out the handout, you walk through the process, you do all of this ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And then you just sort of follow the outline, and it's it really controls the conversation, as long as you kind of stick with it. It's really hard for whoever you're talking to kind of wander off and meander off and come up with excuses if you really just follow the structure.
And what's the first element of the structure?
Well, I'm going to let you carry this because you just do this so much better than I. I mean, the first part is start with heart, which that's the touchy-feely part that sometimes I have a hard time dealing with.
Well, I mean, that's what they use in the book, but I do think it's starting about inward. It looks inward, which is kind of weird because you're having a conversation with someone else, but yeah, they say, hey, let's start with yourself first. And
So the basic thing is look at yourself. Exactly. What it says is recognize and address your own contributions to the problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you got to start with making sure you have the problem right. What is the problem? You spend a lot of time thinking about what's the real issue, because by the time that again, guys, emotions are strong. So by the time you're actually at the point where you want to have a crucial conversation, you've probably got months maybe, of examples of things that have led up to this point. So what's the real problem? Is it the late, is the employee being late? Mm-hmm. Is it, subpar work maybe? So
poor attitude, see that one a lot.
Yep. And in
Where
our
attitudes
especially-
are just a cancer. They're just a
especially in our
cancer.
line of work, I think that we navigate burnout a lot with our team members, and so that exhibits itself as poor attitude a lot of the times. And so sometimes you just have to work through that with your team members, or hope you can rather. So you definitely start working inward and looking at yourself and figuring out what you want out of the conversation. What are you looking to obtain from that person or from the conversation, so that you start with the end in mind, right?
So a couple of other elements that it talks about here when we start with heart is stay focused. Okay. Refocus your brain, which means really clarifying the true goals of your conversation. What are you trying to achieve from this conversation?
Yeah, one problem, right? We're not talking about all the things. We're talking about the main problem.
Well, the questions asked, what do I want for myself, the others, what I want out of the relationship? And how are you going to act to achieve these outcomes? So this is basically an inward reflection, start with heart, an inward reflection of what you hope to achieve. What is the end result for both you and the person that you're having the conversation with?
And I will say, I think you do this part fairly well. In our dialogues with difficult team members, you do this part fairly well. You know exactly, you can get to the heart of the matter fairly quickly.
And I appreciate it. And now you've made me feel so much better. You're a great therapist.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
You.
Okay.
Good to know if the COO thing doesn't work out, I have an alternative.
You could bill at $75 an hour as a life coach.
I'll keep that in the back of my mind. But I do think you do a very good job of the self-introspection, of figuring out what's really going on in this relationship.
The second big part of the outline of the crucial conversation is state my path. Now, what does that mean?
Well, state's the acronym that the authors came up with, right? So state, S is share your facts. T is to tell your story. A is to ask for others' paths. T is to talk tentatively. And E is encourage testing.
All right. So
So
let's kind of go through that because
That's
I'm
a
not
lot
sure
to
what any of that meant.
Yeah, so you state, you share your facts. You start objectively, right? Don't start in with the emotions. I think that so we just came up, listeners, with our 10 rules of healthy rumbling for our leadership team. And one of the rules that made it was you start with I rather than you, using I statements. And I think that that's what made me think about that when I was reading this book. You begin with like objective things, like I feel. That's a very objective. I think, rather than you do.
How is I think and I feel objective? I think really I see, or I
That's fair.
have seen in the numbers, or I have seen in your attendance report, things that objective facts that I can actually point to. Numbers, almost. What do the numbers say?
Yep. I guess I was more saying that, rather than saying you're constantly late, you never show up on time, that's probably not what the authors think we should start with.
Right.
Say share your facts.
Share the absolute. You didn't show up Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever, and just, especially if it's well documented.
Yeah.
Go over what the well documented facts are.
So then you can tell your story, kind of where all those facts lead, kind of like what's your conclusion? Why are we here? Right?
Exactly.
You're late, it's starting to impact the team, impact your workload. I see you're getting behind.
I was trying to think of another one, a better one that had to do more with attitude, because attitude's hard because there's not a lot of objective facts to talk about during attitude other than, hey, I got a complaint from a coworker. I've had that lately.
Yeah.
I got a complaint from a coworker about your behavior. I've gotten a complaint from a client about your attitude. I've gotten this, that, or the other. I mean, I guess those are ways that you can objectively talk about attitude.
Well, and I mean, in a really bad day at our firm, I've heard of managers saying, "Hey, I heard that conversation didn't end well. I heard that conversation didn't end well, and it's because our team member wasn't necessarily on their A game that day, and that's hard. And I heard you slam the phone down. How could that have gone better?"
So those are objective facts, which leads to telling the story, which is communicate your conclusions. Like, all right, so based on these facts, I'm concluding that maybe your attitude is poor. Maybe you're having burnout, or your attendance is subpar. Your attendance is affecting the team.
Well, and another thing that we've been encouraged to do through EOS is it doesn't live up to our core values. This behavior doesn't live up to our core values of excellence, our core values of teamwork, and so It makes it very clear, and it's something that we hire to. It's something that we fire to.
Okay. All right. So the middle one, the A, ask for others' paths. In other words, I think the way the author defined is invite others to share their facts and their viewpoints. In other words, this is where you give them a chance to explain themselves.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good point. How does that go for you when you've done that?
So it depends. What I would like to hear from somebody is I would like them to admit, their wrongdoing and say, I understand this is bad. This is below standard. I will try to do better, but here's what was happening. Okay. So if you will admit the facts and then to give me the reason and then, kind of this, and I'm going to do better. All right. So now we're now on a good path. Mm-hmm. We're on a path to reconciliation, to repair. What I hate to see is just a flat denial from the get-go, denial of the facts, or just immediate excuses, or immediately blaming somebody else, doing everything you can to avoid taking responsibility for your own actions, because that's when the conversation really becomes tough, because now it's become confrontational.
And have you had one where it's gone like that?
Absolutely.
So then how do you bring it back to the outline, or what do you do?
Well, that's a good question. Now, this is where Marc falters, okay? Because what you are trying to do under this methodology is to keep it calm and keep the emotions out of it. And that's where my blood can start to boil and I can start to lose the focus, and it can go sideways.
Same.
It just infuriates me when people won't own up to what they have done, or at least partially own up, acknowledge that there is a problem, or just totally try to blame somebody else.
Yeah.
Failure to take responsibility for one's own actions. That's when my blood boils, and that's when I start to go a little sideways. So, Diana, walk me through this outline and tell me what I'm doing wrong and how I can fix it.
I do think that the focus, they encourage you to always come back and focus on things and not listen to the things that do make your blood boil. I do think I'm also weak in that area. You've had to counsel me numerous times that I can get too emotional in these leadership meetings, because excuses do also. I have the same reaction to excuses, especially when you're dealing with a certain level of a team member. I understand things happen. I still need to think. I still need results. And so I do think that talk tentatively was a surprising one. That's the second T in state, to talk tentatively. And I think I used that recently. And I wouldn't say it was a crucial conversation because I certainly didn't follow the outline. It was a conversation where I reestablished boundaries with a coworker. And I approached it as, this is who I am. I told my story, my viewpoint from hopefully a less threatening position. It just, I'm operating with all of these things, and it wasn't necessarily about what had set me off originally. It was about, hey, listen, I'm dealing with all of this stuff and I'm just trying to do my job, and I don't do well when these things happen. And it was received, I think, very well. And it automatically, for me, took down a lot of the stress and the emotion. It was an immediate relief. I think I shared that with you when I was able to do this with this person. And so I do think that telling that story about, whether you tell that in the terms of a Myers-Briggs, we use DISC a lot here. And I think we're trying to get to Myers-Briggs format a little bit more, and learning
me.
that.
I hate it.
Because you gamed the test.
I did not game the test.
But when we can talk a little bit more about low I, it's, hey, I can't right now, very high stress with all of these things going on, and my low I is definitely coming out. So can you please help me by just keeping our conversations to this type of facts? That really helps me out. And I think it was received as such, which was helpful.
So I guess the whole point here of talk tentatively is, what that's telling me is, hey, Marc, stop blowing your gasket.
Yeah. Well, and I like the whole part about approaching it as a story, kind of giving you it's not about this latest incident, right? We're talking about a pattern of behavior. We're talking about things and we're talking about me, and I think that helped me, at least in that particular conversation.
So the last The E in state is encourage testing. Make it safe for others to offer differing opinions. All right, so there's the crux of the matter. Mm-hmm. This is where I go off the rails.
Really?
Because when somebody fails to take responsibility, it's at that point that I don't really want to hear it anymore.
Yeah.
I think the next section talks about emotional triggers. Like, that's my emotional trigger. Mm-hmm. You know, especially like my one I hate the most is that wasn't my job. There is nothing that can send me through the roof any faster than any employee, any staff member, any attorney looking at me and saying that wasn't my job. Mm-hmm. My head will explode. Because
understandably,
because our jobs, we all have the same job, which is to serve the needs of the client. That is your job. There's no other job description that matters other than that one job description. And if the client needed it, that's your job. And this is where it all falls apart for me.
Well, hey, you made it to the E. So
I made it to the E.
You're doing really well before then. And I do think that it's hard because you do need to have that part of it, right? It is a dialogue. It is not you just talking it's a conversation. Don't engage in a monologue. I think is one of the rules one of the takeaways from the book is don't just talk at this other person that you're choosing to have this crucial conversation with. Allow them to speak and hopefully it goes well. When it doesn't, again, that be focused, also be flexible, but just stay focused on what we're here to discuss. I think that's the important thing.
So I think the next part that the methodology states, and this is what I just said, which I failed to do, is it's called to catch yourself.
Yep.
And that's what I need to learn to do. I need to learn to catch myself. And the first thing is recognizing your emotional triggers. And I just stated what mine was. Mm-hmm. So, all right, I recognize my emotional trigger. I'm not sure how to stop it.
Yep. We didn't plan that one, guys.
Yeah, I know.
We also, yep.
So, all right. So I recognize that my emotional trigger is kind of twofold. One, it ain't my job. Number two, failure to acknowledge and accept responsibility for your own actions.
Accountability. Defensiveness is a big one for me. Excuses are a big one for me. So together, we are just, we're not very good.
And I guess the way I would say that I probably should approach it would be to have a more nuanced conversation with them. All right. So I understand that's how you feel about it. That's your position, but understand from my perspective, again, our core values, which all lead to one result, which is that we're here to serve the needs of the client. And this does not comport with that basic principle or our core values or the objective that you were assigned to meet, whatever the standard is that they're not living up to.
So you just keep coming back to the reason for the crucial conversation.
Right. And you keep going back to what's the standard of conduct and how their conduct differs from that standard and the reason for that standard. That would be better than what I typically do, which is just blow my stack.
Yeah, or shut down. I've seen you shut down too.
That I can do. I have gotten up and just walked out of the room, just steaming.
Yeah.
And that's usually to avoid violence.
This is a safe work environment, guys.
Yes,
just in case.
I have yet to kill any employee.
Yeah. So I think this is very helpful. But then the third element of the outline is kind of that follow-up, which, again, we're going to complete your therapy session and talk about how that's a hard one for you as well in the next segment.
This is Mark Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at mark@markwhitehead.com. Remember, Mark is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
We're back to discuss the final element, or at least the element we wanted to discuss. This is a very in-depth book, listeners, and so we recommend that you go read it, make it part of your library, your management library. But the one we wanted to discuss is follow-up. Because it's Mark's
Achilles heel.
There you go.
When I said I blow my gasket, what I really mean is it blows internally. It doesn't blow externally.
Yeah. And yeah, you shut down, like, right?
I just shut down.
You do.
I shut down. I frequently get up and walk out of the room, and then I'll just sit there and steam about it. But
and sometimes depending on the situation, when it's a really unfortunate one, you may steam for a couple of days. And so that's why I think follow-up is the hardest part of the conversation, because you've prepared yourself in a number of ways, right? The book has done it all for you. The book has given you the outline, the handout. The book has given you the questions you're supposed to ask, and it's given you your state methodology. And then you've had the conversation. So you've all have this emotional build up to the conversation. You have the very tense emotional conversation, and then you have to have it again.
Yeah. And so I think here's the real crux of the problem from my perspective, is that I typically don't take the time and effort to plan out the conversation ahead of time. Mm-hmm. I just sort of know it's a conversation that needs to be had. I will tell somebody to get 30 minutes on my calendar. And at that point, like, well, I'm smart. I've been doing this for 30 something years. I can wing this. I don't need to prepare for it. And that's, I think, probably where the mistake begins in my execution of this, is I think I got it in my head and I really don't. That's the first part. First of all, it actually goes back to recognizing having a crucial conversation, that we're about to have one, as opposed to, I just have another appointment on my calendar.
Yeah.
So identifying from the get-go that this is more than just a simple appointment to discuss general issues. This is an appointment to discuss something that is very important and is likely to be contentious and is likely to raise the emotions in either one or both sides of the conversation. Can sometimes feel personal to the person that you're trying to have this conversation with.
I think it's personal to everybody. At this point, especially with the size of our firm, it is personal. And people will say, well, take the emotions out of it. This is work. It's not personal. I'm like, no, we spend a lot of time up here, and this is a small enough firm that it is personal.
So that is the key. And I don't know what it means. I don't know if I need to put a CC next to this appointment on my calendar to remind me that this is going to be a crucial conversation, as opposed to just a regular meeting. But I think that's the first point about it, is recognizing that it will be a crucial conversation, and then planning accordingly to make sure that I've got my ducks in a row. I've got the right mindset. My mindset is going to be, we're going to carry this out. I'm not going to let this person trigger me. I know what my triggers are, and the end result is going to be X.
Exactly. Knowing where you want to end up. That's, I think, very important. And then scheduling the follow-up, in a couple of weeks maybe, to make sure that the decisions that y'all have decided, okay, you're going to start showing up at 8:30, or your attitude, we're not going to, we're going to work on attitude, or whatever the decisions that you've identified from the behaviors that are going to change from the crucial conversation, that those things are happening.
Yeah, the follow-up meeting,
that's the hard one.
It's I think the most important one, because that's where the accountability comes in. It's like, Absolutely. All right, we came up with a solution. Now we're sitting here 2 weeks later. Have you executed on the solution? Have you implemented what we came up with? What have you done about it?
And I think that it can be very harmful if you don't have that 2-week follow-up, or whatever cadence you choose to have, because now everything was tense before. So you have a conversation and then you don't follow up. And so you've almost left the wound open, right? You've not allowed it to close and heal properly. And without that follow up, and not only for you, but for the team and everybody else that's seen it and experienced the behavior, the poor attitude, it does, I think, reinforce the negative thoughts of, oh, well, that person's just the favorite.
So here's the key and I just came up with this just a second ago in my own mind, but before that first meeting is over, you need to have the second meeting on the calendar. So do not let that person leave from the first conversation until you have calendared the next conversation, a physical meeting on your calendar. Therefore, they know, quite frankly, they know how much time they have. If you set it 2 weeks down the road, they've got 2 weeks to deal with it and fix it. But they know there's going to be follow-up. as opposed to let's touch base later. Just don't leave it as some
Loosey-goosey, yeah.
some loosey-goosey thing. Set it on the calendar before they leave. So it's a trick I learned from a dermatologist. So she sets my appointment for my next appointment before I leave that appointment.
Oh.
Yes, because I'm her retirement plan. Because every time I go in,
My dentist does that.
She chops a little piece off of me, and I have to pay for it. And like I can see her funding her 401k with me. But anyway, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant business move.
It is I like the tips that you've shared with listeners. So, it's almost like a cadence of, so if you get the CC, the crucial conversation, maybe plan a 2-week time block before it to really do the outline, do the handout. And then also while you're doing that, schedule the 2-week follow-up after to make sure that you're all holding each other accountable.
So here's an interesting question. So there's a template for having the conversation. Do you prepare the template and then give a copy of it to the other person while you're having the conversation?
Oh,
I don't know. Would that be an ideal or not?
I don't know. I don't like that idea because I do think that one, you shouldn't worry about other people seeing it, right? That this is personal to you, that these are your things.
I guess you're right.
This is something that's for you. I don't think you should be filtered when you're working on your handout rather than, thinking about it. So,
all right. So let me ask you this question. Do you use the crucial conversation methodology when you're going to terminate someone?
I think you use the PIP, the performance improvement plan methodology there. And you can use them in tandem, I'm sure, but the HR in me, which I am a lawyer, so there's only, what is it? I know enough about HR to be dangerous.
Kind of an annoying fact about you, I think.
Exactly.
I think you'd
Which
be easier.
Part?
The fact that you're an attorney. You'd be a lot easier to deal with if you weren't an attorney, I think.
Well, you know what? In my next life, Mark.
Yeah.
So I do think that you should at some point start following the HR PIP process. Though I'm sure leading up to it, we have a lot of crucial conversations. Though I probably didn't follow this, we have crucial conversations with team members leading up to the PIP.
So, but I would say this is like, I wouldn't view a crucial conversation as a methodology necessarily for dealing with a problem employee that you're trying to show the door. I think really the benefit of the crucial conversation is with your high performers, or at least your average performers that just have certain little quirks that you're having to deal with. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So don't feel like this is not just for the C players. This is for the A and B players.
Yeah. It's almost like we're trying to rehabilitate this relationship. Like this is something that we are going down the wrong path. So I think it's someone you want to keep for sure. So as we wind up this episode, Mark, do you buy into the author's premise that you're going to have to get better at crucial conversations for this firm to grow in a healthy manner?
I do, but what I would say with this is sometimes I need help identifying the crucial conversations that I need to have.
Oh, well.
So sometimes I don't recognize all the situations that are going on. There's like too many moving parts for me to notice everything. So it is helpful when, people on my leadership team, other people, when they help me identify the situations that I might need to address.
Because I do, so you do, back to your whole dumb idea or the dumbest thing you've ever said. So you do think it will eventually impact the bottom line if you don't, if your inability to have a crucial conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, keep your A performers doing A+ work. You want to take your B performers and move them up to the A level and so forth and so forth. And I think this is just one way to do that.
Yeah, well, the word I use with you a lot is distraction. Like, Mark, if we don't address this now, it's just going to continue to be a bigger and bigger distraction from the ultimate goal, as you said, of doing the work for the clients.
Exactly. All right. With that, we are out of time. I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. Remember to rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. And if you've enjoyed this, please tell all your friends. We're trying to get the word out and get the listenership of the podcast up. And visit us at successfulbarrister.com. And also don't forget to visit our sponsor, Mark White & Associates, a national disability benefits law firm, by visiting disabilitydenials.com. And if you want to reach me directly, My email is mark@markwhitehead.com. Mark is spelled with a C. If you have any comments about the show, want to chat, anything like that, drop me a line, and I'll be sure to get back in touch with you within a couple of days, assuming I'm not floating around on a boat somewhere. And with that, I have to go have a bunch of crucial conversations. So we're out of here.
Bye.